So yeah, hey. So basically, we're gonna get into it. Why I'm getting frustrated with testing in general, but I think I'm not the only one. So I'm Csaba. I'm a front-end developer at Zencargo. I'm working basically from Athens to London, and Zencargo basically is trying to optimize supply chain on the way that we're providing data to our customers and visibility on the shipments, what they are making. And in this case, they can make like much better business decisions and save some money and all that stuff. So that's great. So I'm here to talk about how would you even test like a React component, and what would be the approach which would stand like on the long term, I think. So basically, what is this talk not about is not about the only way. It's probably not about the perfect way neither. It's depending on your application, your use cases, what you really want to test, and what is your code about. So it's just my way, and I think it's my approach to like having that. So, and what is that really about? One way, how would you go about it? One way, how to gain confidence to push your changes to production, and just one way, how to reduce the time maintaining those tests, which one of the parts which made me like really frustrated about. So when you're talking about like why would you even write tests in the first place, like probably you have your own reasons, right? So probably introduce bugs 100 times. You are not confident enough to do any changes on your code base, especially when you are having like something older, or you are just new to the code base and you are not 100% sure like what's going on. So these are the reason why would you write tests. But let's take like a real world example. Okay, so Friday you are smashing coding big time, having like a good time at work, pushing your changes to production because there's a product manager. Hey, we need these changes. Come on, push it. Okay, no worries. Did you write tests? No, not really. So what happens on Saturday? And you're gonna get this on like one of your team chat, and it's just, Andy a little bit confused. How would he actually guide the customer? Should refresh the page. Actually, you can refresh, but you're not gonna win too much time, and you're ending up all Saturday doing this, right? So I think probably you would be there at some point, and I was as well. So, but what's wrong with testing in general? And is there anything wrong with testing? Well, it turns out it's not actually wrong. Not actually. It's just hard to maintain on the way that if you are, for example, testing your components on the wrong way, that you're gonna ending up basically with a working application but a failing test. And this one is not really a good way. It should represent like something like you're writing tests about the functionality of your application. And then if you just refactor, or if you just touch this component and works exactly the same way, it shouldn't fail, right? So how would you write like better and more maintainable tests, especially on React? So when it comes to the point to testing your UI, you would like to see like how things are changing on the screen. You not actually care about like implementation details, that what is this fancy function doing in the background, but you would like to see the outcome, because this is what really matters. This is how would your users use this application, right? So, and here are the tools that you can use to do this approach. One of them is React Testing Library. So what is React Testing Library? Is basically it's just a lightweight library built up on the top of the DOM testing library, which like the general approach will be test your component as your user would test it, and this should work perfectly fine because you don't care about implementation details. So how React Testing Library will help you? So the query is how you would access the DOM actually. It helps in the way that you have like 3 different ways, which is get, query, or find. So these things and all the rest is just an extension of it. So like the get works in the way that when you're getting something from the DOM as a query selector type of thing, then the get immediately throws you an error if it doesn't find it. The query, slightly gentle, is just gonna give you null, so you can assert if it's null or not. And there is the fine, which actually gives you like a little time. So it's going to set the timeout for 4,500 milliseconds or something like that. And if it happens, it happens. If not, error. And all that stuff, basically, these queries are extremely smart. Imagine the fact that you don't need to rely on, like, for example, container.querySelector, and then you're passing like an input and the name. What is the name of the input? It's implementation details, so probably you shouldn't really care about. But what is the text on the screen, or what is the label? What is the placeholder? What is the label of that input, or what was the title? What's the alt text on the image? These ones are more of the approach what screen readers can read as well, and how your user would find all of those things on the DOM. Also, you can fire up events. It's only one, but there is millions, so you can go mouse over, key press, all that sort of stuff, which I'm going to show you. And this is actually how would you access your element. So there's the cancel button. You're just querying by text, and there's the cancel, which is the label on the button. You can use any of the matches. You can use like a string. You can use a function. You can use, if you are really fan of regular expressions, you can do all sorts of stuff. And there is some async utilities when you have some fancy, nice animations, which are setting the timeout, and afterwards they're going to appear. You can just wait for the element, wait for the DOM change, or wait for the element to be removed. So this would be the approach. How would you probably do that? So now, I just want to code a little bit for you, just to see like how it works and what would it do in action. And if you have any question, please leave it at the end, and I can answer all of them, or we can discuss it later on. So yeah. So first things first, I wrote an application for that very purpose. It's a banking application. So it's a generous bank, not an emotionally destructive picture over there. You should feel safe, right? So basically, it's just a normal login. When you log in, you see your account, and then you can change credit, debit, right? You have all of your transactions if you have any, and if you don't, you can make a payment. And on this payment, if you basically not doing anything, it's going to validate the form. And also, you can. Who needs some money? Someone? Who should I send some money to? Elvis? Elvis, you want? Okay. Elvis, you deserve it. Great presentation. So your account number is this one, I know, because we know each other. And then reference, I don't need. Actually, I'm going to give you for a goodwill or something. Anyway, so I'm going to send you, how much do you need? 300? 300, 100. So yeah, so when you submit it, it's actually just putting it here. It has a server. I wrote the server with TypeScript, and it uses GraphQL. And the reason being is because like GraphQL is extremely popular at the time, and I think it's very nice to see like how would you actually handle testing GraphQL and testing those hooks which GraphQL provides you, like use mutation or use query and stuff like that. So that's that. So okay, tests. Let's see. So first, let's just try to write a test. I'm going to basically write a test around this component here, which is called expense list. And great. So this is the test case, and I'm going to show you how the code looks like first and what happens. Okay. So this one uses TypeScript. I choose it to do like TypeScript because. Sure, both of them are. Yeah, sure. Is it better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Okay, great. So, expense list. So you have your expenses component. I'm using TypeScript here. Note that it's a very good way to protect your application in general. You can really prevent some runtime errors just by writing the code. It's going to tell you what you can do and what not, which is extremely useful. So yeah, so what happens there, this interface props, if you're not familiar with TypeScript, I'm just specifying like what would I like to have in the props. And then when you're here on this account type, it's going to tell you like what it could be. It's just an enum. And yeah, here that is the use query, which is accept the query itself and the variables, which will be the type in this case, which I'm passing from the props. So when it's loading, I would like to see a spinner. If it's error, I would like to see something went wrong, or any fancy stuff what you can think of. And then I just want to like really see like if is the data there and if I can access everything there, which is possible, and is not empty. So in this case, I would like to render the list, which is basically, and this is one of the key part of React testing library as well. So this expense list item is another component which we imported. And the main difference between like React testing library and Enzyme is that React testing library actually is not going to give you like just this one is an expense list item and do like all the props there. And you're not going to have a way to assert it that how did you call this component in the first place? What are the props? Because these ones are implementation details which you probably don't really want to include in the test, or maybe you want. But in my way, how I found it useful that not to, and just see like if is there anything there which I should know about. Because if there is a black box there, which I cannot assert on this test, then it may be a little bit vulnerable. So yeah, here is the component what we're going to test. Okay, so these are the tests. I set it up forward. So let me just explain you like what happens. I have a subject function which I'm going to invoke in every single time in every single test because this is basically the render, and I would like to set up the render itself. So React testing library by default calling you the cleanup function on any testing framework which is supports before each or after each. So it will do it for you automatically, so it clears up everything for you. So what happens here, I'm just returning everything from this render. And what it returns exactly is that there's like a set of things, right? So for example, you have debug, which is extremely useful. I'm going to show you why. So you're going to call this subject, and after that you can call debug. And when you refresh the page, you're actually going to see something like this. Ignore this error because it's about act, and we're not going to wrap this component with that. But what you can see in the first place that is actually when your component initially renders is loading, right? This is the first step because Apollo hook as well, it provides you this. So initially it will load until it's going to find something. So the first assertion what I would like to make on this component, because this is the responsibility of this component, to render one spinner actually. So how would I do that, right? So I'm gonna do something like query by text, because this is the way how my component represents this. And then I'm gonna just expect the query by text to be loading. As I said, you can do any matchers here if you want, and I want this not to be null. Cool. So I'm going to run this test, and it works. Yeah, why shouldn't, right? It's great. So then you want to have like an error, and the way how I set up this testing and the subject function, I can actually trigger an error, and I can trigger some empty results, which I also would like to see. If there is any error, I would like to see something like error. If I see like empty results, I don't want to render anything in the first place. I don't want to see any titles. I don't want to see anything. So here, there's one render, and then I'm going to call here again. I'm going to go query by text, and then I'm going to go subject. And on the error, I'm going to pass true. If you would like to, you can explicitly define a variable just to make it more readable. And also, one thing I forgot to mention, the way how you're writing this test, as you can see like there, on this left-hand side for me and right for you, there's the expense list, render spinner when it's loading, renders error when there is an error. And in this way, you can write easily a documentation without having any like, comments in your test, like how this component actually works. So this is a great way to do that. So query by test, right? So how does it work exactly? So when I have this, I need to see this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to expect this. not to be null, right? They told me not to live code, but anyway, so so this one basically should work, but it's not, it's failing. But why is it actually failing? Because I'm trying to do the right thing, right? This is the text, I just copy pasted, and it should work. So it turns out that in these testing libraries, like you have something like wait, and you can actually combine it with an async function, and you can just wait for this result to come, because in the first place, it's just gonna be loading. So it's not gonna throw you an error no matter what. So you're just gonna go for a wait, and you can make like a callback function on wait, and this is what you expect to happen at some point, and hopefully it will do the job. Great. Sorry, this debug probably is going to make you a little confused. Why is it there now? But it was just from the previous function. So yeah. So now still this two is passing, which is great, and then renders the item finally. So let's see how's the item look like on first place. So you have like an item, and what does it have, right? So it have basically, and you know what? Let's see on the debug. That's always better. So like you go const, taking out the debug, subject, then you're gonna go for wait, and you're gonna see what will come. So let's see what are the results. Okay, cool. So basically, what I have here is actually what is exactly the way that you represent your list, right? There is the title, which says statement. There's another title, a subtitle. There's all transactions. There's the header, which are date, description, type, in, out, balance. Just for a refresh, and you can see it here, right? Cool. And also you can see like all the details which will come here, right? So these are the things which you would like to assert, like if they are there. So let's see, how are we going to do that? So you're going to go for, again, for example, query by text, or get by text, or anything what you really like to have here. I'm not going to go too far with that. I'm not going to assert every single thing which is there. So allow me just to like have like one test, and this one would be just the title. As I said here, you can use like something like this just to ignore like upper lower case, for example. So I'm gonna go for statement. Great. And this one to not to be null. Great. So then on here, basically, I just want to like trigger if it's an empty results, then I don't want to display anything. I'm specifying here if it's actually should render in the first place or absolutely not. So I just don't really want. So here you can just go and I don't want any error, but I would like to have an empty results. So that would be true. And then we will see that is nothing rendered apart from this container. Okay, really important to know, if you, for example, are trying to test something like a model or something which is using Portal or having some implementation details, how React testing library actually works as a render is that grabs the body, grabs one div, and in this div, it's going to render your component. So if you're going to have like another model inside, you're going to find yourself outside of the container. So if you're trying to do container.querySelector dot whatever it is, or anyhow, it might not going to work because you are not actually querying from the right container. This is really good, actually, really good to know. Okay, so basically, the other thing which I wanted to show you in live coding is that we have the application. The application basically, it's a simple router which it just defines like where would you go in the first place when you're entering on the application and stuff like that. So I wrote a test which basically more like an integration test, and it kind of go through all of these things. You're clicking through and you're expecting things to happen, and in this way that you're just clicking around the application, make sure that everything works. Worth it? Maybe. But there is one really important thing here. I have to log in. And the login, basically, how that works at the moment is that probably you would query the input something like this, right? Container.query selector and stuff like that. So let's see how that works in tests. So you would run this test. It works perfectly fine, right? But one day, basically, you're going to have a chit-chat with your backend guys. And since you don't really want to modify too much the values that you're sending to the backend, you just really want to have everything from the form. By the way, the form is using Formic. I'm not sure if you ever used that. It's a fantastic library to manage your forms. But when you're submitting that, you're just submitting with the values, and you really want to have something out of it. So, OK, so what happens here? That everything should work correctly. So now I'm going to go to like a completely different component, which would be a login form. So on the login form, what I would do actually, I would just, they said the email address is not really a good way. Let's go for email, and this is what I would like as a value. OK, great, no problem. So what you're going to do here is that you're going to go for, you're going to just refactor it, right? So you're going to just get the email address, and you're going to make it as an email everywhere. Great, fantastic. So now you're going to go ahead, refresh the page, and you're going to get like a crashing test. But why? It should work, right? I mean, how Formic works is that getting the name, and this is how it manages the state. So the name will be the key, how you would fill up the form, or how would it interact with Formic. So actually, everything should work because it does. But when you are going to the test, actually you're realizing that it's just not working because you did this query selector, and you went inside the trap, because these ones are implementation details which your user doesn't care about, right? So if you're going to go ahead and do something like this, and using, for example, query by test ID. By the way, the query by test ID is the least query what you would like to ever use, because there are some better ways to do. The only thing why I made this choice, because my input field, which is manages Formic on the way that is passing down everything to the input component, it actually doesn't allow me to do that. And this indicates a problem with the implementation, which this is why I actually left it there, because I would like to talk about this as well. Like, this type of things indicate something which not really good for your implementation. So when you're having like this, you can notice that everything is passes. Even though that you refactored your component and it shouldn't pass, it just does. Because this is actually how would you do like in test-driven development, when you're getting the test up front, and you can just actually write your component according to the test. And this is the way I believe, and the guys that they wrote this React testing library as well, that would be actually the way to go. That you have your functionality, you have your component, and if this one should match. How would you achieve that is up to you. You are the developer, you should have the freedom to do whatever you like. But yeah. The other interesting thing it's more about GraphQL and Apollo, because I had some really great time finding these things out. I can show you one more component which I have tested, and this one is the account. So the account is the whole page, the whole container for everything which is happening on that account page, which you can see here. So this one is responsible for rendering the header, rendering your list, making the payment, display the model, everything. So which would be a catch here is that when you're providing actually, so let me just talk you through on it. So you're doing a mutation here, right? On the mutation, you're refetching few queries, which was the key of the confusion. And then you can open the model, close the model, and then you can go through all of these implementation details, which would you do. And then basically on the test, how would you set up like a mock mutation and mock queries is that actually you need to pass as many times a query as it fires. So if, for example, one query fires, that this mock should be 2 times in your mocks list. Otherwise, it just won't work. And here are basically all the tests which these ones are this component responsible. So it just renders the page, just go through all of these things which are like kind of indicating that the component is there. But actually, when you're saying that, for example, this might be not a good assert because it's not like, you know, comprehensive or not good enough, you can think on the way that if something wrong in the component, this should fail anyway, because the component every single time it will render properly. You don't have black box. You don't have like just one list item with all the props there and what was the props. Like what was the props are not really important for the UI perspective. So then it opens the model. As I said, basically, if you're using something like query by text, it will take the container as like a normal body, so it will actually query that. Container.query selector won't find it because the container would be something different, and yeah, you can actually make this fun. You can write the functions like fill the form, and you can put it like your little test helpers, and you can just write something which it does for you. It's completely fine. Also, that login functionality, all that stuff you can extract it. At the end of the day, you can basically have like a set of tools which allows you to write like more meaningful tests on a really fast way, and actually on the way that should be. Why I got extremely frustrated in the beginning with testing is because I spent horrendous amount of time just to set up one test, and it actually took like two times more than actually developing the component. I was ready with the component in an hour, but 2 hours I was trying to make something pass, which passed in live, you know. And that's why I was saying that I didn't really like tests in the first place. But when you're taking such an approach like this, you probably find it a lot easier and a lot maintainable, because when you refactor something, you don't need to rewrite your tests, your query selectors, all that stuff. So, yep. That's it. That was me. Thank you very much.